My name is Elson Sutanto. I am the moderator for this session. I am a principal analyst with Juniper Research. We conduct consultancy analysis into the IoT tech, digital telecom space. And I would like to introduce my panelists. If you'd like to introduce yourself briefly and what you do and who you work for.
Sure, thank you. I think that's applause is for us. Hi there, I'm Phillip Harrison. I run the consultancy department at Fifth Nine. Fifth Nine's a digital factory with two parts to it. The consultancy stream, where we help our clients understand the digital strategy, how they're going to implement it and their pain points, and the other half of the company is the development, how we develop the apps and solutions to fix those pain points for our clients. So we work very much in the telco IoT space, been there for over 10 years.
Hello, I'm Wayne Lloyd. So I'm the CEO and founder of Smarter Contracts, which is a blockchain software and services company predominantly working across sports and retail. I'm also a partner of EOS Nation as well, which is one of the top 21 block producers for the EOS platform. So essentially what we do is we just work with people who want to build on top of EOS and give them as much guidance and coaching as we can.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Genevieve. I just ran under all the wrong panel places.
Stay with me.
Because I was told I was inside. Anyway, I am the CEO of AgriLedger, and what we're doing is using blockchain technology to revolutionize what I would say is the agricultural supply chain. So making use of, and I think in my point of view is the blockchain is more the enabler to allow us to be able to bring and to orchestrate all the different things such as IoT, finance, and all those things, and mobile.
Great stuff, great stuff. Thanks very much. Okay, so as you can see, we have had an email chain in the last week and a half about points to cover. There obviously is too much here, so we're going to cover on the core points, but I may have to wrap it up because we only have half an hour, but we'll try and do a few questions right at the end as well. So the very first point that we've been discussing about is what you guys consider to be the number one area or use case for the combination of IoT and blockchain, and why is this? If I can start with you, Philip, that would be great.
Yep. So I say right now the number one use case has to be supply chain. The IoT and blockchain combination has real power to revolutionize the provenance in supply chain. But that's right now. I think if you're going to ask me what's the future number one, I'm going to say smart cities. So IoT devices is going to increase or double by 2020 to a $600 billion market. And so smart cities is estimated to take about 23% share of that market. So smart cities and the IoT and blockchain capability of smart cities through smart contracts, trading of devices and data and the tokenization of that will absolutely massive.
Sure. Wayne, would you like to give your 2 pence to that?
Yeah, of course. For me, it's supply. Obviously, supply chain is the number one use case, and I think there's a number of studies that prove that. But I think for me, at the moment, there's a distrust between brands and their consumers, and I think that this is a real opportunity for brands to really create some transparency in the way that they do their business, and I think that has a knock-on effect to the digital experience that their customers are having and the way that they engage with them. So I think for me, that is
supply chain.
Yeah.
Right, sure.
I said medicine. So obviously, from my standpoint, it is the supply chain in agriculture and being able to trace. But I think also we're seeing a lot around the IoT and medicine, being able to really track what's going on with the patient and provide that in a trusted fashion. So using the power of the encrypted and also shared data between doctor and the individual. And finally, there is a great project going on in the US which is looking at that information being provided to insurance to reduce the cost of actually looking at those events. So if you go to the doctor and you're wearing that IoT device and you're doing the exercise that you say you're going to be, then it reduces your insurance. So there is opportunity there also.
Sure. So there's clear value in those use cases. But let's move on a bit more onto the kind of issues that are kind of holding back or potentially could hold back the combination of IoT and blockchain. I remember as part of our email trail that we were discussing, I think, about the level of implementation and the different stakeholders that would be involved. So someone, I think it might have been you, Philip, or Wayne, I'm not sure, but you were mentioning how it might be easier to implement blockchain from a top level perspective, but for the smaller guys at the bottom, it might be a bit more complicated, isn't it, really? Do you want to elaborate a bit more on that?
Cool. Look, end-to-end transformation is end-to-end, and in supply chain, it's not just you as the person at the top, but it's everybody else further down that supply chain. I think getting everybody to hook onto that supply chain in itself is a digital transformation project, even for the smaller guys. So that's relative to the money that they generate, and they're not as incentivized as the guys at the top. Talking about the broken brands and the disconnect between consumers and the brands. The guys at the bottom, they don't care as much as the guys at the top because they have a different value proposition. They just want to make it and send it. Of course, they want to make the guys at the top happy, but there's misaligned incentives for going onto these platforms. And for me, I think there's a lot of use cases out there where it's just a one up, one down, where you're just tracking it. Like M&S is a great example where you're tracking meat. It's just easy from one to them. It's just quite an easy thing to do. But when you're tracking the provenance of, let's say, a tiramisu or something like that, where there's 40,000 food miles, and you just want to track where everything's come in order to make that one particular product, that's very complex. It's not very easy to do. So I think that absolutely people are pushing on with working with blockchain, but it's not enterprise-wide because it's not as easy as people think to implement end-to-end.
Sure. Okay. Philip, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so just to build on to that, that's absolutely right. It has to be end-to-end, and it's also a little bit of, if you get some rubbish information into your blockchain solution, then people start losing the trust in your capability. So you've got to have that full buy-in for the whole supply chain, literally end-to-end, from an IoT angle. So you've got to think about security. You're only as strong as your weakest element in any security solution, as I'm sure everyone's fully aware. So from that, you've got to look at your IT devices, the security on it. Most IT devices now have SRAM on it. Put a POF on it, so it's got a uniquely unchangeable feature on it, so it can't be changed, and that device is what it says it is. Register that on the blockchain, then it can always communicate, so device A is device A. Then you've got the transfer of data over to the communication network. Cryptography comes into there, hashing comes into there. Then the blockchain is the recipient of that. But that's got to be at every stage in your supply chain. If you have one weak IoT device, then you've got potentially corruption of that data and people lose faith in it. I think it was HP who said 70% of all IoT devices are not encrypted. I mean, that's crazy. You've got to design security at source to enable your lower supply chains who can't afford the high-end stuff to be secure.
So I'd like to actually throw something in, which is that the world that we know is changing, and it's been enabled by all the disruptive technology. So one of the things I like is called Post-Lean Institute, and it talks about how we're going to be working in the future. So I think that we need to start looking at where the individual becomes more powerful, and you basically are looking at spoken models. So because we're doing spoken model and there isn't that hierarchy, you then need to create trust across nodes. So we start working in a nodal fashion rather than a hierarchical fashion. So as a result, when we talk about the bottom person, that bottom person is actually shifting to where now they have more of the power and they're going to help dictate. I don't think that blockchain is the only answer, but it is part of the equation which will create that trust to allow all of us to be able to have conflicting outcomes, but be able to put enough data there to be able to work together. So zero knowledge is going to be part of it. So we need, I think that we are probably going to be the last generation which works in this way. The next generation are really going to be creating their own mechanism. They're not going to go into work, and they're probably going to work for themselves, for corporations. So that, taking that into effect, then we can start looking at having the tools. This is an IoT device. We don't actually think of it that way, but it is, all day long I've had this in my hand, and you can track me with that and say it's me. So I think that we're going to see a change, and the trust that the blockchain brings in is really going to be the change in there with other pieces in there.
Yeah, speaking on that note with trust, I mean, that was, I think, a couple of your points in an email across to me about one of the major setbacks that might stop it from gaining more traction than it currently can. And I think you were saying that some don't believe that current systems are broken, and that there is still some challenge in terms of educating the wider ecosystem, about this. It's quite hard for some people to get their head around this concept, right?